Hey, good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see this room so full. We are going to call to order our school board meeting for November 9th. It is 6:32 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us via Zoom and also in the building. So nice to see everyone. All board members are in attendance as well as Dr. Furman. So we will get started. First, can we just all have a moment of silence, please? Thank you. And for those who are able, we could stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and then we just need to approve any revisions or to the agenda. So do we have any revisions at this time? Okay. All in favor to approve the agenda? Aye. All right, and then the minutes. Did we have any changes to the minutes, Shana? No. All right. Awesome. And so all in favor to approve the minutes with no changes? Aye. Aye. All right, awesome. So tonight is hands down my favorite board meeting of the year. And the only thing that I wish is I could see all the smiles, but I'm just gonna have to look at your eyes and see that you're squinting really tight and we're all excited and happy. For those who don't know, it is our Teacher of the Year recognition. And honestly, we should probably do this more than once a year, just because, especially in this last 2 years, you all have shown such a resilience that I just don't know how you do it. And so you were like awesome before, and now you've just, gone up on my chart for sure. So I'm especially excited to be able to present to you all today. So with that, Dr. Furman.
All right, well, welcome everyone, and it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. Even with your masks, I recognize these amazing teachers, and my principals in the back as well, so thank you all for being here. And with that, I am going to pass it off to Ms. Burnett, and she's going to get us started.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have the honor of introducing an amazing group of teachers tonight. Before I introduce them, I want to take a minute to tell you how our Teachers of the Year were selected. School level Teachers of the Year were nominated by their peers, and all nominees must be in at least their 3rd year of employment with City Schools of Care. Nominations for School level Teacher of the Year were required to include how the teacher demonstrates leadership within the school or system, works as a team member of the school and works well with staff, parents, and administrators, and provides evidence of student achievement and engagement by providing a stimulating classroom environment. Nominations for School level Teacher of the Year are considered by a committee and selected by the principal. A little bit about this group we have before you. Tonight you will hear about these amazing individuals. You will hear their words and the words of their colleagues. They come from all kinds of backgrounds. Some are second career educators that followed their passion to the classroom, and some began teaching right out of college. They teach preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, kindergarten through 2nd grade EIP, 3rd grade special education, middle school math, and high school health and physical education. They have combined over 165 years of experience. But most importantly, these people are amazing educators that bring their best to our schools every day. And now, to introduce the teachers. The teachers, when I finish reading your introduction, please come forward to my right to receive your awards and flowers and take a picture with Dr. Furman and Ms. White. If you'll come forward. After your picture, please head back to your seat to wait for the entire group to be introduced and wait for the announcement of the COC Teacher of the Year. Get started. First up, we have Raffia Carrion, preschool teacher at College Heights. Raffia has lived in and around Decatur for 12 years. She started working at College Heights 8 years ago as an assistant teacher and is currently a preschool teacher. Her colleagues say, Ms. Russ helps us as a class and individually. She works with each child where they are and moves them forward and understands them in a way. She has a very calm, friendly, and nurturing disposition, which allows her children to feel secure, grounded, and ready to learn. In her class, she understands and values that children have a desire to have fun learning and exploring new ideas. She says each year, I attempt to provide a learning environment that encourages the whole class and each child to explore their independence, creativity, and ways to show empathy to others. Rakia says her favorite thing about teaching is tied to social emotional learning, a key developmental skill for early learners. She says, my favorite thing about teaching is when I see a child help a friend out of the kindness of their heart. I love seeing a big, wide smile on my little friend's face when they accomplish a task. Rakia not only loves college heights, but she loves many places in Decatur. She enjoys going to Little Shop of Stories, Squash Blossom, the Wild Center, the swimming pools, and Legacy Park. But most importantly, she's a proud mother of a DHS senior. Congratulations, Rakia. Next up, we have Stacy Foster, kindergarten through second grade EIP. Stacy has been an educator for 14 years, and she's in her third year as a kindergarten through second grade EIP teacher at Claremont. Prior to teaching at Claremont, Stacy was a third grade teacher at Westchester. She also worked for several years in Newton County as a district level instructional specialist coach, a math reading interventionist for grades kindergarten through fifth, and an interrelated special educator. Stacy says that she holds a strong belief that lessons should be considered learning adventures, where a deep connection with an array of content areas is fostered through experiences with art, music, and getting your hands dirty. Her colleagues say she helps students with whatever skill they are working on and encourages them. She helps bring out the best in them so they believe they can do it. She uses fun, hands-on activities to motivate students to apply themselves through play. Stacy is not only a dedicated teacher, but she is a dedicated teacher leader. She serves as a math teacher leader and is a leader in the district's rollout of the Georgia Numeracy Project. She has also been recognized for her efforts by being selected as a finalist by the Georgia State Selection Committee for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. Her colleagues say Stacy helps students feel accepted and supported by creating a safe environment for them. She pushes students to work together, which leads to rewarding experiences for the students. One of Stacy's favorite things about teaching is knowing that those beautiful moments that she gets to share with so many children can be the foundation for so many more spectacular noticings. Outside the classroom, Stacy holds adult literacy sessions, leads kindergarten through fifth parent support groups, loves sewing, creating natural soaps, candles, lip balms, and going on food adventures. Sounds amazing. Stacy and her husband are proud parents of a DHS senior. Congratulations, Stacy. The Flower Juggle Award name. All right. Next up, we have Missy Rose, kindergarten teacher at Glenwood Elementary. Missy and her husband have been proud residents of Decatur since 2001. She's been teaching in CSC for 11 years, where she has taught second grade and third grade at Oakhurst and kindergarten at Glenwood. Teaching is a second career for her. She has a master's in physical therapy from Emory and worked as an outpatient physical therapist until she decided to change. Missy's colleagues hold her in high regard. They say Missy holds all students to the highest standard possible, academically and socially. She believes that students can achieve, and they do, in her classroom. She always encourages students to try to produce quality work on their own. She lets them know how proud they'll be of themselves once they complete the task, rather than have an adult do it for them. She also loves to keep writing journals to give the students at the end of the year so they can see how far they've come. Missy's favorite thing about teaching is watching the students transform before her eyes. She says this is especially relevant in kindergarten, where students often come in not knowing their letters or sounds and leave knowing how to both read and write. I love teaching children how to problem solve on their own and watching them become confident enough to take a risk and try something outside their comfort zone. I love the exact moment when a student realizes that they did something independently without giving up. And lastly, I love how elementary students will love you unconditionally and will always tell you the truth, even if it's not what you were expecting. Glenwood teachers and students are not the only ones that love Ms. Rose. Parents speak highly of her too. Another Glenwood teacher said, Missy communicates with her parents consistently. She says she shares student success stories and how parents can best support their children at home. I'm aware of this because of all the wonderful things that parents in our community say about her. The community adores her because she is such a strong teacher to so many students. Missy says it was a pleasure watching their children progress through this school system and that her and her husband are officially empty nesters now that their daughters, both DHS graduates, are at Auburn University and Dartmouth College. Congratulations, Missy. Next, we have Stacy Kenner, kindergarten teacher at Oakhurst Elementary. Stacy began teaching 21 years ago in Charleston, South Carolina, after graduating from the College of Charleston. She moved to DeKalb County, where she taught for 8 years before making her home at Oakhurst, the best little school in the world, where she has been for 11 years. Her and her husband have been on their toes at all times. Stacy is dedicated to her students and is constantly inspiring them to learn. She makes school fun and motivating and is always willing to put 100% energy and effort into her lessons. Stacy's classroom consistently feels safe, supportive, and inviting. She is responsive to her family and treats children with respect and dignity. She is a lovely staff member to work alongside and is always willing to support and encourage others. That is a statement from one of her colleagues that perfectly describes Stacy as a teacher and a colleague. Stacy believes as a teacher that one size does not fit all. She says when serving children and students of all abilities, from racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse backgrounds, I strive to plan lessons with all in mind. Asking students what they know or if they have questions about a topic helps me scaffold instruction and makes lessons more relevant to students. When I offer choices in the classroom, it allows them to relate to the content in a way that sparks their interest. Stacy's colleagues say she is one of the most positive and calm teachers I have ever worked with. She really takes the time to get to know her students to find out what motivates them to do well. She has a seamless way of incorporating individual motivators into whole class instruction so that each kid has something to work towards and feels seen. Stacy says being a teacher is so much more than a career. It is a passion. The cycle of a plant in real time. One that is strategically planting acorns in safe, nurturing spaces. I am adding consistent, equitable sprinkles of kindness, encouragement, and creativity. As time goes on, my children grow. I see a harvest of strong-rooted, gargantuan oak trees that produce fruit for the community. As I witness this process, it brings me unimaginable joy. Congratulations, Stacy. Next, we have Julie Parker, first grade teacher at Westchester Elementary. Julie has been teaching for 21 years. She began teaching in Gwinnett County after earning her degree in elementary education at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. She has spent her last 5 years of teaching at Westchester, where she says that she felt right at home immediately and knew it was a place she'd never want to leave. Julie and her family live in Decatur, and her sons are at DHS and Renfro. Julie is known as the go-to person for reading and phonics instruction at Westchester. Her colleagues say, Julie is a phenomenal teacher. She has found her niche in teaching with a passion and love for phonics and reading instruction. Julie delivers phonics in a personalized way for each of her students. She knows each child's strengths, and at the same time, she puts emphasis on challenging each child to grow in their own ways. Her equitable practices are apparent as she makes sure each child gets the instruction they need in the way they need it. No child leaves her room having received anything less than her best, and this happens year after year. Julie says, I fell in love with my job while teaching children to read. Being a first grade teacher, I have opportunities to take children from reading picture books to reading chapter books. It is a remarkable process and amazing to witness. I get to sit with small groups of children each day and watch their faces light up when they realize what they can accomplish, when they persevere to try their best. It is the most rewarding job. Not only does Julie give her best to her students, but she's always there for her colleagues as well. One said, Julie is such a strong, positive force in Westchester, and I credit her with helping me get through the massive amount of changes that took place during COVID. Stayed up for hours on end to learn Google Classroom and help walk my team through how to do it. She was able to see a light at the end of the tunnel when all I saw was darkness. I know I could not have made it through those hard times without her. We all know our strengths and weaknesses as teachers, and her strengths rose to the top during some of the toughest times I've ever had in teaching. She is a rock-solid colleague, and I know I can count on her for anything. Congratulations, Julie. Next, we have Kelly Stock, second grade teacher at Winona Park Elementary. Kelly has been teaching for 20 years. She started her career in Michigan after receiving her bachelor's and master's degrees from the Ohio State University. She moved to Georgia in 2003 and began teaching at Winona Park in 2012. She has worked as a literacy specialist and has taught first and second grade. In 2010, she received the Milken National Educator Award. One of Kelly's colleagues said, what first pops into my head is seeing Kelly interact with students on the playground. Students from every class will flock to her just to talk. Even in this time when kids are playing and she could be taking a little break, she challenges them to be critical thinkers. She responds with questions that prompt them to think about things more deeply. She encourages kids to take play to the next level. Even though I don't get to see Kelly teaching in the classroom, I know that this is the environment she creates. And confident to ask questions, try new things, and engage in meaningful tasks. Kelly says, one of my favorite things about teaching is seeing students develop independence and not need me anymore. I love building strong relationships and being silly with my students, or our classroom can be a safe haven for risk-taking. My students teach me new handshakes. We build a family and pet photo wall. I'm a spectator of games and recitals on weekends and love spending recess time on the swings chatting. These simple but essential human interactions help us grow empathy and practice compassion. We also know how to have a good time. You'll often find our crew having bubblegum dance parties while we practice classroom stewardship, creating goofy movements to help remember concepts, and using funny voices, faces, and sounds in order to feel relaxed and ready to learn. Kelly not only loves to bring play and adventure into the classroom, but her time outside the classroom is an adventure as well. She loves bonfires with her husband and cats, yoga, gardening, volunteering, and traveling the globe. She's been to 5 continents and has summited Mount Kilimanjaro. Another Winona Park staff member said, Kelly is, simply put, an inspiration to all at Winona Park. She's worked tirelessly during her tenure here and still always has a smile and a kind word to offer to anyone who crosses her path. Former students and parents alike sing her praises and often talk about the feeling of being part of the staff crew. Feeling of belonging. She's one of the most exceptional teachers I've ever had the honor of working with. Congratulations, Kelly. Next, we have Dawn Stevens, third grade teacher at Fifth Avenue Elementary. Dawn has been in education for 21 years. She has a wealth of experience inside and outside the classroom. She started teaching at a state-funded mental health facility in Illinois. She then taught self-contained special education in Illinois and then in South Fulton County. She took a break from teaching to attend grad school for nonprofit management and then worked at the state office for Special Olympics Georgia. Dawn went back to the classroom in 2004 at Drew Charter School before moving to Westchester and then Faye. She and her husband have a daughter in 6th grade at Renfro. Dawn is a leader and a teacher that others look to for creativity and fresh ideas. One of Dawn's colleagues shared, Dawn embodies what it means to be an IB educator. Her lessons push children to use IB traits, especially inquiry. Dawn is a model of interdisciplinary teaching. She integrates art, science, math, social studies, and language arts seamlessly into her instruction. Dawn's room is an inspirational place to visit. Every time I step foot inside, I see a new, exciting idea I want to implement in my own classroom. Dawn goes above and beyond, bringing in exciting, engaging, and rigorous materials that challenge and expand our curriculum. She always shares willingly and contributes selflessly without ever asking or expecting accolades. In her application, Dawn shared about an EL expedition from her time at Westchester that she is particularly proud of. She shared, I worked at Westchester with Stacey Foster, another Teacher of the Year on the 3rd grade team, and our EL expedition was Shelter in America. During our expedition, students read books about houselessness, learned from experts, and we built a Mad Houser shelter. All of the kids participated in reading, writing, and building. The thing I loved so much about this project was how many people helped and participated in building the shelter. It was a great opportunity for the kids to see that they can find a solution to a huge problem in their immediate world. The shelter was eventually moved to the backyard of a shelter for people who are homeless in Southwest Atlanta, and a man lived there. I think my goal for this project was for the kids to see that they can make a difference and that all people deserve to have a home. I just want kids to know that they are the person that can fix things. Dawn not only teaches students that they can fix things and change the world, but also challenges her colleagues to think critically and look deeper. Her colleagues shared, Dawn is always pushing our team for equity and diversity in our teaching practices. She challenges the team to elevate their understanding of equity and bias in our work. She asks us to be critical and push for broader representation in all that we do to teach our children. Congratulations, Dawn. Now we have Shannon Bruton, special education teacher at Tally Street Elementary. Shannon began teaching in 2002 in Brooklyn, New York. In 2005, she moved to Georgia and worked at Clayton County Schools for 10 years before moving to CSD to teach at Faye's and then Tally Street, where she is currently a special education resource, language arts, and math teacher for grades 3 through 5. One of her colleagues shared in her nomination, Ms. Bruton spends so much time building relationships with her students and their families. She sets the highest expectations for work ethic and holds her students accountable. She is empathetic and understanding, providing a safe place for students to land. Her students love and respect her, and she does everything she can to help them grow both academically and personally. She engages with her colleagues and encourages them to be the best version of themselves. Shannon says that relationship building is her favorite part of teaching. She says, although I'm a small group teacher with a small roster, I think it's so important to build relationships, not just with the group of students I teach, but with every child I come in contact with in my school. I make it a point to try to get to know as many students as possible. I do this because you never know how what you say may impact a child for the rest of their lives. I think it is so important for adults to build relationships in a school because ultimately these relationships impact how students feel about themselves and the place they come every day to learn. And while this alone can't totally be responsible for student achievement, it is pertinent that students feel that that they belong, are being seen, and matter in order to do well. Shannon is a leader in her school. Her colleagues say Ms. Bruton is a voice for equity and inclusion in our school community. She speaks up and out for our students of color and students with disabilities. She works to ensure that scheduling is conducive to her students' needs and has her IEP criteria, goals, and success in mind with every decision she makes. She voices her concerns and questions during our planning meetings and helps us break down topics to best serve our own students as well. Outside the classroom, Shannon has a 22-year-old son and enjoys spending holidays and traveling with her family that mostly live in New York. Another side note, Ms. Bruton is also the very first Teacher of the Year for Charlie Street Elementary. Congratulations. Now we have Larica Frazier, sixth grade math teacher at Renfro Middle School. Larica is a graduate of the University of Georgia, where she was also a member of the track and field team. After UGA, she was an underwriter in the medical health insurance field. After 6 years, she made the decision to go back to what she originally majored in, education. She has taught in Clayton, Butts, and Henry counties and joined the Renfro staff in 2013. She also serves as one of the Renfro cross country and track and field coaches. Larica says her favorite thing about teaching is seeing her students get excited about learning. She says, I like talking to them about how sixth grade math made them build their confidence in math that they thought they did not have. It is a privilege to guide them in their observations and build connections to help them with their future learning. Plus, my students are always so fun and entertaining on the middle school level. One of her sixth grade colleagues shared, Ms. Frazier is a teacher that touches all students that enter her classroom. No matter what your ability level is, comfort level is with the subject matter she teaches, past success or failure with the content, she reaches you right where you are and elevates you beyond with a lot of knowledge, love, and accountability. These ingredients add up to students achieving far beyond what they thought they may have been capable of, and endears Ms. Frazier to her students. Larica is seen as a leader in the school, a colleague shared. As teachers, we do not get to see our fellow colleagues in action much, but Ms. Frazier is one of the few that I have had the privilege of watching teach an entire lesson, and she balances pushing students forward and supporting, holding them accountable, and nurturing effortlessly. Whenever I pass her room, I am always listening, hoping that I can pick up something that I can use in my own classroom. In her application, Larica shared, all of my 17 years of teaching have been at middle school level. When people ask what I do and I tell them I'm a middle school educator, the response is generally something along the lines of, how do you do it? Just as I cannot fathom how difficult it would be to pursue a career as a soldier, a nurse, or a kindergarten teacher, they cannot understand why I would willingly subject myself to a room full of hormonal adolescents on a daily basis. What I do know is that there is no other grade I'd rather teach. This is where I am meant to be. The other place she is meant to be is cheering on her own two Renfro students, as she is a proud mom of an 8th grader and a 6th grader. Congratulations, Larica. Now we have Allison Swartzhall, Health and Physical Education Teacher at Decatur High School. Allison has been teaching for 12 years, all of which have been at Decatur High School. She is very active at DHS, serving as the department chair, and she serves on, as she says, pretty much any committee or team I've been asked to be part of. She has coached softball and basketball, and she started the flag football team, which is in their 2nd season at DHS. She loves spending time with her family, especially her wife and son. calls family. Allison said, my favorite part of teaching is building relationships with our students, advocating for them, and teaching them how to advocate for themselves. Currently, I'm a mentor to a former DHS student. I actually never taught her or coached her, but she was someone who, as a senior, I was encouraged to take under my wing. Academically, she was struggling, and the graduation coach sent her my way. Not only did she make it to graduation, but today, I'm still her mentor, and she's in college thriving. Now I support her as she navigates college rigor and life's challenges. This is a student who did not see college as an option for herself, and now she is doing an amazing job and even has achieved being on the Presidential Honors List twice. This is one example of how and why investing in our students has been so fulfilling. In addition to mentoring and supporting our students, Allison does a lot to support and inspire her colleagues, and they think very highly of her. Her colleagues say, she makes students feel safe and secure where they are able to be more productive, which in turn helps them reach their full potential. Coach Paul is the glue that holds our whole department together. Any problem that goes awry, she always finds a remedy for it. She inspires students to believe that they can do anything. She helps students realize their potential. She inspires students through open communication and the willingness to put in the extra time with them. She has been very instrumental in my success at Decatur High School. Coach is constantly supporting her students and colleagues in a caring and thoughtful manner. She also has everyone's best interest in mind when making decisions and creating learning opportunities. Allison is passionate about and proud that she has been able to create and build a mental health course at Decatur High School. She says there's a lot of stigmatization in our society. People are so frequently placed in boxes, whether it's because of the color of their skin, disability, gender, or sexuality. I mean, really, the list goes on and on. I think I was put into the education world to help students destigmatize their own thoughts and judgments. Send young people into the world being proud of who they are, no matter their journey, valuing their relationships, and taking pride in being able to make a positive impact in the way that they choose is my greatest hope. Congratulations, Allison. Let's give all of our teachers a minute. I agree, we have some amazing teachers of the year. Each one cares deeply about their students, and they truly live up to our vision of building a foundation for all children to do their best so they can achieve their dreams and make the world a better place. So now, Dr. Furman, board members, audience members, before I announce the 2021-22 District Teacher of the Year, I'd like to say thank you to a couple of people. First, to DEF for sponsoring the award tonight and for always supporting our teachers. Gail, would you please come forward?
Hi, everyone. It is lovely to be here and also very strange to be here because while I used to be a regular, it has been a very long time since I've seen many of you in person. But there's not much in this dark, cold weather that would get me out of the house, but honoring teachers is certainly something that motivates me to drive over to say, on behalf of the community, a huge congratulations to all of you on this well-deserved honor. What a year this has been. I sort of feel, and maybe you do too, that you represent not only the great work that you each have done, but really all of your colleagues that I know you feel bonded to from this really, really challenging time period that we've been through. So while you certainly, it's your merits you are here for tonight, I do also feel like your being here, being honored, really is honoring the whole Decatur teacher and employee and staff effort over these months to keep our kids as doing as best they can in really, really hard situations. So on behalf of donors and supporters of DEF across the community, we just want to say, just hearty congratulations and thank you. We do have small token for gifts for you of $200 for teachers and $500 for the Teacher of the Year. It is my utmost wish that you each go out and spend this 100% on something that brings you joy, whatever that is, whatever, we'll do that for you. You deserve that and so much more. So thank you, and thank you.
Well, thank you, DEF, for always being such a great supporter of our school district and our teachers. I would also like to thank the District Teacher of the Year Selection Committee. They had a hard job, and they took it very seriously. So now, as you've heard from their own words and the words of their nominations from colleagues, our Teachers of the Year are an outstanding and dedicated group of educators. But now it's time to announce the District Teacher of the Year. As the CSC Teacher of the Year, our representative will go on to compete in the State Teacher of the Year selection process. The teacher selected will also receive $1,000 toward a professional learning of their choice. And now, if everyone can find a screen to look at, we will find out who our 2001-2002 District Teacher of the Year is. Like we need a drum roll. All right, very good. New assignment. Stacey. Will y'all join Dr. Furman and let's write down here for all right, very good. Congratulations. And that concludes Teacher of the Year for tonight. I just want to say thank you, teachers. I so appreciate an employee level and a parent level. You're all amazing, and I can't say enough things about you. Thank you for letting me get a little glimpse into your world by reading your application. I love it. I love hearing about you and learning about you. So, thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank Courtney for all of her hard work arranging Teacher of the Year. It's a lot of work on her and her team, so thank you for arranging that. And Gail, thank you for your generous contributions and supporting our teachers as well. And I just want to extend another congratulations to our Teachers of the Year. As you're coming up and I'm hearing all the words that you've written and that your staff have written about you and students and parents, I see that when I visit your classrooms, and it's just amazing to see you in person a little bit outside of the classroom and get to celebrate the amazing teaching that you bring to our school system. So thank you all so much. And you do any of the board members want to say anything before we let them else enjoy their evening?
I wanted to co-sign what Bill Rossman said, that, this is such an honor, and I know you all are so deserving, but you also represent your colleagues so well, during this difficult time as we have been coming out of the pandemic, but knowing how hard you all have been working during this time. And so just thank you for all that you've done for our students. Thank you.
Great. Well, good evening. You are welcome to stay if you want to. Fine, but if you want to get home, go right ahead. Thank you all so much. Have a good evening.
I mean, don't all leave at once. You could have trickled out, Good seeing you.
What's it with kindergarten teachers and having twins? Is that a thing?
She started it.
this evening, either in person or on Zoom. We are opening up to Zoom
Yep.
questions, correct? Okay,
Yep,
just want to make
no
sure. So no public comment today, so we'll move on to the superintendent's comments.
You, Tessa, whenever you're ready, I'm ready. Good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that recognition of our teachers as much as I did. That's such an amazing honor for these teachers, and as I say, they represent all of the teachers. I can tell you as I visit our classrooms, I truly see that type of dedication to our students in every building and in every classroom. For our comments tonight, I wanted to first do a quick welcome. We have our two board member-elects joining us this evening, Carmen Sultan and Hans Utz. Taste of first board meeting, and we made a nice long one for you, so hope you enjoy it. So welcome and congratulations to both of you. I'm really looking forward to working with the both of you, and I want to thank you. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Service on the school board is one of the most important ways that our community can give back to the citizens and to the students, and I really appreciate you stepping up and really volunteering your time to help support the students in our community. Much appreciated. So congratulations and thank you. Give some general updates. It's been a busy month, as typically for me. I did participate in the anti-racism series with the city of Decatur this month. That was a great conversation that I participated in. Also, through DEF, completed the Seeing Whiteness for Anti-Racism series, and that was an 8-session series that was led by some members in the Decatur Education Foundation, and really learned a lot and unpacked a lot about how, as a person, a white person with privilege, how we approach and how we work on ensuring equity for all. And that was a really great series. I hope they offer it again, and if they do, I'll be sharing that information because it was just an amazing experience to connect with other individuals in our community and help discuss issues of racism and how white people can help address racism when we see it. I also participated at the National Superintendent Forum and presented a session on principal evaluations, and that was really a great opportunity to share my knowledge with superintendents from around the nation on how to supervise and support principals through the evaluation process. Lots of stakeholder meetings again this month. Had a really good meeting with Teacher Advisory Council. It was a first for me. We finished early. I was surprised and very happy to know that our list of things teachers are getting concerned about is getting shorter and shorter. So that was really nice to hear from them that they're seeing results and they're seeing improvements in what's happening in our district for them. Same with our classified staff advisory team meeting. That was also just a very short, brief meeting. The issues, again, that they're bringing up are few and far between, and there are issues that we're working on. So I'm able to get their input, able to hear their perspective, and use their direct information as we make decisions. Had my first two superintendent student advisory team meetings, and those were just probably the highlight of my month. Getting to meet with students in the group, it was amazing to hear their perspective on how our school system impacts them as students. They provided a lot of just really interesting and detailed information that I hadn't heard that perspective from before, and lots of good information came out of both of those meetings. We have another meeting with them monthly, so I'll have another round with them next week and have lots of great information. So what they're doing for the student advisory is we talked about just some get to know you, got to know the students a little bit better, and then ask them, like, okay, what are the issues that you want to work on as a student body? What are the things that are coming up that you feel are important to address? So we talked through those. We're going to flesh out to kind of prioritize what issues they really want to focus on, because they brought a lot of things. So we're going to go through an activity next month or in December to really identify some key top priorities, one or two things that they really want to work on. And then I started gathering information from our students about our grading process. We are going through our grading and equity task force. And the students have a lot of perspective on our grades, not just content grades, but effort grades and how those are given and assigned to students, so that I think they raise a very important perspective when we talk about grades. So we'll continue to work with those students throughout the year. Several community meetings, had a great lunch with Patty Garrett and Mayor and Andrea Arnold, our city manager, just to get some touch base on how things are going with the city and partnerships that we have going. Had a great lunch with Becky Evans. She's our District 83 representative, and got to give her some direct communication on things that are important for us as a school system and how she can support the city of Decatur in the House. Again, I meet monthly with Gail Rothman. We've got some great projects that we're working on, and number one is Gail has given a grant to our Decatur Virtual Academy and is helping us transition one of our residences that we had purchased and had been sitting vacant for a long time as a kind of a home base for our Decatur virtual students. So the students have named it the Dragon's Lair, and we're really excited to give them a place that they can go if they need some one-on-one tutoring, if they need to do some work with some teacher guidance, if they're struggling in their classes, as just an added layer of intervention. It'll also be a great place for our students when they have to take assessments. We know that some of the parents aren't comfortable with sending their students to a school building at this point, so it provides that second step opportunity for us to provide. So I wanted to thank Gail for that. And having my first round of COVID advisory team meetings, I'll give a little more information there. And then I also went over to our Kentucky Street facility and met with our transportation team. And they shared with me that I'm the first superintendent to ever go to Kentucky Street. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, well, here I am. And it was a great meeting to hear from our bus drivers. Got a tour of a bus, offered to go for on to her next task. But it was really a great meeting to get to know our drivers, to get to know what their needs are and what are their specific things that are important to them and our transportation department. And it's a great facility. Like, I was very, very impressed with how organized and well run the whole facility is. They're doing a great work over there, and they do share that facility with our school nutrition team. Some more general updates, lots of community events this month as well. Beth Lewis, if you don't know, she works at the high school, and she organizes the what she calls the squad, and it is teachers and administrators that mentor and support our student athletes. So people are assigned athletes and mentoring 3 of our flag football players. And she organizes events before games, little social events to get to know the students that you're working with. And the tailgate squad was actually just for the adults that are in the squad to thank us for being supporters of our students. So that was really nice. Went to the soapbox derby. That was amazing, and really appreciate the support for our Student Success Center. And they donated, I think, over $35,000. So that was a huge success for this event this year. Also attended the Decatur Youth Council, met with the students, and this is a council that's run through the city, and they meet monthly, and it was an opportunity to hear from not just City Schools of Decatur students, but students that attend even private schools that live in our school district. So great opportunity to just hear from the students again and lift that student voice. And then last Friday, actually, our attorney, Mr. Wilson, invited me to present at the Rotary Club, just kind of a state of the district and how things are going in City Schools of Decatur. So that was another good interaction with our community leaders. Again, throughout this month, I've been working with my staff, leaning in a lot to our data culture and building our data culture. So I created a staff development that the principals then re-led, like I created the template and the video, and they led that at each of their schools, and we'll be reviewing that as a school district tomorrow in our admin council meeting to get that feedback. Because what's very important to me is that we lift the teacher voice, we hear from our staff in the buildings, and we use that input as we make decisions. So this was a really good opportunity for me, even though I can't be in all of our schools at the same time. It was a great opportunity to gather feedback that we can then review as a school district. And then Ms. Broom and I are gearing up for budget season. So we've been spending a lot of time looking at the numbers, starting to create some ideas about what we have on the docket for the budget. And that is our November work session. Board members and board members-elect, as we'll be discussing our budget priorities so that Lenita and I can really frame a budget that is focused on what are the priorities that we have as a school district. Also wanted to give a shout out to our student vaccination event. We are partnering with the CAD Pediatrics again, but layering on some additional supports. DEF and DHA and City of Decatur have come together to help make sure that we can remove any barriers that there are to prevent families who may need to get vaccinations for their students, if they need childcare, if they need transportation. we are working together as a team to provide those supports so that everyone who wants to go get a vaccine can go get a vaccine. So really excited about that. And that vaccination event is November 16th. We've also been collaborating with DHA to help them get their parents to sign up and provide some educational opportunities for those families as well. Want to give some big shout outs. First, I want to recognize our school nutrition team, and Tiffany Lawrence is our director of school nutrition. Every so many years, they have to complete an audit that is run by the state of Georgia, and they completed their audit last week. I think it was last week or the week before, and they only had 4 findings. And the huge shout out there is the previous time, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, they had 33 findings in their audit. So huge improvements in our school nutrition team. That was an amazing accomplishment for them. And when you hear what the findings are, you'd be like, really? There's lots of little teeny rules and processes and policies that school nutrition teams have to follow. So they're just really small things. So when I say they had findings, they weren't like terrible things that would make you not want to eat our food. They were little teeny like missteps of giving 1 extra piece of cheese in a sandwich, and I'm not even kidding. Also want to give a big shout out to Oakhurst for their Blue Ribbon celebration. Ms. Sanders and Ms. Simonis went up to Washington, D.C. and received the Blue Ribbon for Oakhurst Elementary, and that was a huge accomplishment. I want to give a big shout out to Decatur Debates. They won some awards in their last debate and are moving on to the next level of awards. And they are going, I believe, to California for the national event. Also want to thank our community for passing East Block and the senior tax exemption. Those were huge events on the ballot, and that was just a nice way to hear from our community their continued support and continued support for our seniors in our community to help make sure that we can keep our seniors in their homes and as we continue to provide a high quality education for our students. So I want to thank our community on the whole for passing those. Also want to congratulate our cross country team. They won state championships on Saturday morning. And one of our runners, and gosh, I can't remember his name right now, I want to say Christian, is the overall state champ. So huge shout out for our cross country team.
Nice.
Yeah. The big celebration, I think, that I want to make a really big deal about is our graduation rate. We've shared this in the Friday follow-up, but I think this deserves a lot of congratulations as a school district. So our overall 4-year graduation rate for 2021 was 96.7%. Our 5-year graduation rate was 96.39%. And I put on the bottom there, the state average is 83.8%. So we are by far achieving a graduation rate that far exceeds the state graduation rate. So I'm so proud of our teachers' hard work. And as you hear from the teachers of the year, this work starts in our pre-K program. This isn't just our high school teachers teaching to a high level. This is all 13, 14 years that students are being supported, are being challenged, are experiencing rigorous education in our classrooms to get us to that high level. Our students would not be graduating at such a high rate if they weren't coming with a strong foundation. So that is a huge accomplishment for our school district to have such an amazing achievement of that high graduation rate. And I also want to point out that you'll see, and I'll show you another slide, we are closing the gap between the student groups and their graduation rates. So our overall graduation rate being 96.73, but you'll see our student group graduation rates aren't far away from that overall average. So we are seeing that we are paying the educational debt to our students that have been historically marginalized. And just to give you an overall summary, as you can see here, we are getting that return on the equity work that we have been putting in place for years. So this is just a historical summary of where our graduation rates have been over the past 4 years. And you can see that we are rising the tide for every student and creating more equitable outcomes for our students that have been historically marginalized. So a huge accomplishment for our school district, huge accomplishment for all of our administrators and teachers because they are leaning in and doing the work so that all of our students are finding equitable success. Some quick COVID updates. I just pulled the final data. It's not the final data. Please, we are still teachers. I love them, but they're like students with turning in their work sometimes. So we are still chasing down handful of teachers to turn in their vaccination information. But overall, right now, we have an 88% of our staff are fully vaccinated. So I think that is a great number for our school system. And then our student vaccination rates are 57% at the high school are fully vaccinated, 33.8% at the middle school. We will be capturing more data as our students of the younger ages are getting vaccinated. I'll be working with our communications team to find ways to help our parents submit that vaccine. I've gotten information that it's hard to navigate that Infinite Campus tools, or working on ways to help support those parents who may be having a hard time getting that information uploaded. But we're still working on that, because my board meeting to have 100% final information for what we have at the time. Did want to say I met with the advisory teams. They went very well. It was very informative to hear from members of our community and get their advice on what they see coming up with COVID, what their recommendations are. We're getting lots of questions from our community about when will we start peeling back mitigation layers, and their recommendation, and I support that, is to be very cautious with pulling back mitigation layers. I don't want to be the first district out there to say, hey, let's not do this, and then we find out 2 weeks later that now we've spread COVID in our schools. So we are going to take a cautious approach as it comes to pulling back mitigation layers. The agendas are posted on on the webpage for in the superintendent's webpage, and there are recordings of the conversations. So they're held in kind of a round table format. So I pose questions, ask them what their advice would be, what their perspective is, and then I take all that and process it, and really then use that information to make decisions on what's best for our school system. We do have 2 meetings in December. Those will be open for public, not public coming in, but we will be Zooming those meetings. So if people want to listen in live, they are very much welcome to do that. And then I did want to update, we did have to suspend weekly testing, and that was very unfortunate. However, just all the things that were happening that were not positive with the lab and the company we were assigned just made it impossible for that to be an effective way for us to continue. We are looking at another company. We're looking at another company that not only can do the weekly testing, but can also do point of care testing for us if someone's showing symptoms, as well as looking at a possibility of test to stay. They've been doing that successfully at Marietta City Schools, and that is an opportunity for a student that is not symptomatic. It's not a student that tests positive. We know anytime a student tests positive, they go home, they don't come back to school until they have met that criteria. But if I'm sitting next here to Miss White, I test positive, she's not testing positive, she's not showing symptoms, she can still come to school, but she would have to test every day. So we're looking at an option for this company to do that as well. So, and that is something that I will talk through with my advisory team before we make any changes on our COVID protocol. All I have for this evening. Thank you, board. Any questions or comments?
Well, thank you so much for putting that together. I was curious on the advisory board, this meeting that you had with the students.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of your takeaways as far as they're concerned?
Yeah, good question. A couple concerns have come up. At the high school students, the counseling department has come up as an area that they're looking for some more interaction with their guidance counselors. So that's been one area that they shared. The time with counselors and looking at how we can get more support for our counseling team. So, you know, as a school system, do we have enough counselors? So my question is, are we staffed appropriately? Are our counselors working, you know, so much, but the need in our student body is so great that we need more counselors. So that's some more digging I have to do and exploring on what the solution could be for that. We also talked about mental health for our students. That across the middle school and the high school came out as a big need, as they're just needing support for mental health for our students within the classroom. What they're experiencing in the community was the other huge kind of lift that I took out of that. And then the last one was helping students know what to do when they're being, when they feel they're not being treated equitably by a staff member. Mm-hmm. So we talked about a student bill of rights, and our students responded that they feel like they know how they should be treated and how a teacher should be treating them. Their comment was, we don't know what to do when that happens. So that was one of the topics. Lots of other little things. We're going to spend the next meeting really fleshing out which ones should be prioritized. Yeah, good question. Thank you.
How many students you probably have told us this before, but how many students on the advisory council?
Let's see, at the high school, I think I have 3 or 4 per grade level, probably about 20 total at the high school. And then the middle school, I think I'm at like 13.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Also, wanted to ask is, I know you mentioned that you and Ms. Brooms will be gearing up for, budgeting season. And, we've had some conversation about, a few years back where, staff were able to submit kind of their wish list of, things that they would like to see included in the budget.
Okay.
And it wasn't a guarantee that they would get those
Right.
things, but we were able to collect, you would collect them and then share
Yeah.
them with us.
Okay.
And then we just kind of discussed
Okay.
what our priorities are in relation to those wishes.
Okay. And that was sent out, the teachers submitted that too, or just the principals?
Principals, yeah.
Okay,
It was the
yeah.
principals, yeah.
Yes, we will plan on doing that again.
And the last question, I know I forwarded an email from a community member who was asking about unvaccinated staff
Mm-hmm.
and how that is being handled.
Yeah, so we've put some additional mitigation layers in place, for the staff that are unvaccinated. We had hoped to give them, testing, and then we don't have tests. And we realized, and that was one of the points that came out of the advisory team, is that a daily testing is not necessarily the necessary. So once someone had submitted, like, hey, if you do testing, should it, they said it's every day, that's a lot, it is a lot. So I talked with the advisory team about that, and that is like best, because if you test, that decreased amount of testing would also be appropriate. So we did talk about that. So we put some additional mitigation layers in place, while we're gearing up and getting the next testing, company online.
Wanted to comment and say thank you for all of your efforts to engage with the community and with our city leaders and with groups with whom we have an invested relationship, like DHA and DHS, and just how valuable and important that is for our school, because we depend on community support, and having these strong relationships will really benefit us and our students. And I also think it's fantastic to see that you're meeting with our state representatives, because that has I don't know that that's happened, where I'm not sure if our superintendent or our board our board has, but I think having those meetings between the leaders and being able to directly relay our needs and our experiences to our state representatives and our senators, for that matter, is really important. So I appreciate your efforts to do that, and also your visibility in the community. I have heard from families and community members that they appreciate that you show up, that you're at the events, and that you are supporting the students in their activities. And I think that really builds relationship with the community as well. So thank you for all those efforts.
I only have 2 questions. One, you mentioned that the high school students, you're still looking at grades, and we've talked a lot about the difficulty of understanding maybe report card. So I have a separate question about grades. Are we still looking at we've stopped ranking, or at least made it optional for high school students?
Yes, no ranking.
But we're still, for some reason, ranking the top 5. It's still on the agenda, I hope, not this agenda.
Oh.
That we're gonna look at not ranking the top 5 either.
Up with Rochelle, because I didn't know we were putting any class rank on anything.
When it was presented to us a couple months ago, there was no ranking except for the top 5.
I'll follow up on that. Okay.
That was the question.
Okay.
I'd like to see it all going.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to just endorse your high school student advisory committee. It is a great need for more counselors at high school. The number one complaint that I get from the parents that I speak with, it's the number one weakness that we have seen in our own experience. It's just, we need more counseling at the high school.
And the beauty of technology, Rochelle has texted me and said there is no rank on the transcript unless they ask for it.
And what about the top five, though?
No,
Okay.
you're a rank.
Because we got that information.
was about like how to choose who speaks, maybe that was.
I follow up with her on that, but no rank. Yeah.
The last thing, and we've talked about this, but I kind of think we owe, and I'm going to ask you if you can address, actually, I'll just say that I shared the anger and embarrassment of the community that we canceled school for a baseball celebration. And I think that we need to acknowledge how disruptive that is, how counterproductive it is to trying to actually make up the deficit that we need to make up after the past couple of years of closing school. And that it's just a completely warped set of priorities that we're going to cancel school under those circumstances. I'm not being critical of your decision, because we are kind of victims of circumstance. And it's complicated when you live in a large county and many of your staff have children in that county. And if they cancel schools, it's very hard to have school yourself. And so I understand that. But I did think we should, number one, acknowledge the frustration. And number two, think about what we can do not to be in that circumstance again. And if we've got systems that are just going to cancel school for no reason, what can we do so that we can continue to do our own thing by having, childcare for staff who need childcare in those situations? I don't know, but it's just an unacceptable situation, it seems.
Yeah, closing schools is a last resort. My cabinet knows that I was like, nope, not closing. They're like, are we closing? I was like, nope, we're not closing. We're going to go to school. And then it just became apparent that there's no way, unless we were putting 200 students in a cafeteria with 1 or 2 people monitoring those students, that we'd be able to offer school. And at that point, I have to say, we just cannot bring students to school in a safe way at that point. So I was also not looking forward to canceling school, trying to wait till the last minute to see if we could keep our students in the building. But unfortunately, we were not able to. And I will bring this up with TAC. I meet with them regularly, so I'll put this on my next agenda to see what ideas they have, because they are the people kind of at the forefront of this problem, and I'll talk with them and see what ideas they may have.
On that note, are there community leaders who made the decision to have a parade on Friday with whom we can share our concerns? Because I was asking myself, why isn't this parade on a Saturday if we expect children to attend and families to enjoy it, and also to be educated and not have to choose either or? And so there may be reasons for that, but I think there are also many reasons for why it shouldn't happen again, and that should be taken into consideration, because millions of students missed a day of learning, and also that disrupted the workday for millions of parents. So I just feel like it was so disruptive, and so I'm not sure who to share this with, but I'd be interested to know if that's something that we as a board would like to do, is share our opinion and experience with whomever it is who makes those decisions in the Metro Atlanta area for, the next time the Falcons win, or, the United wins, or who knows what it is, but, maybe we as a community need to be thinking about education as a priority and not an afterthought.
Any other comments?
Yeah, a couple of them are said. I want to reiterate Jana's point about, if you're asking us about budget priorities, I thought it was great in the year when we asked principals to provide feedback about what makes the school run.
Yep.
In terms of you and Lenita sitting down and beginning, I think we're sorely lacking in historical tracking as a way to approach the budget. It does take a degree. We've got a lot of community angst in terms of like, well, where are the numbers? Where do they come from? Where do they track? It's the best way to make sure that we're being responsible board members to know where the increases have gone, et cetera. I would love to see that as a starting point. I know that's asking a lot.
We actually just talked about that today,
Okay,
like
great.
Starting with a historical perspective, and then saying, hey, if we don't change anything, here's what the budget would look like. Then looking at priorities, pulling in the principal wish list. I think those are all things that we can bring into that discussion.
Right, because otherwise it's just school, we've had this X increase.
Yes.
Yes, we have, no, we haven't, and if we have, how to justify it. And the third thing, the COVID advisory council, and you just said that you would make changes or whatever and stuff like that, is if they suggest or from a current mitigation strategy, what is your understanding of how that process would go?
So, it'll be one of those processes where I'll get the advice from these two teams.
Okay.
They are well, credentialed individuals.
Right, yeah.
Much more educated than I am, lots of expertise in health and mental and, epidemiology. So I'll ask them, get their advice, get their perspective. And I purposely chose, individuals that had varying perspectives. So it's not one group always saying the same thing. They are, and I'm encouraging them to share those multiple perspectives so I can think of things from multiple groups of people, students, staff. And then I will also be looking at what is the guidance from the CDC, what is the guidance coming from our city, if they're putting mandates in place, how would we align ourselves with those? So it won't be like, hey, they advise that we take away masks, we're gonna just go up and take away masks. We're still gonna take a very thoughtful process and really lean on what is the guidance that's coming out of our national experts from the CDC.
And the last note I have, thank you for visiting Kentucky Street and making a relationship with the bus drivers. I mean, they're such an important part of
They
the
are.
educational experience and getting our kids from point A to point B. So,
Yep, and,
thank you for doing that.
we're also giving our bus drivers a $500 retention bonus, and the monitors to let them know that we appreciate them with all that hard work and being the very first frontline workers for our district.
Right.
They're the first employees that greet our students in the morning, and most of the time, the last employee to say, have a good night to our students as well. So they serve a very important role when it comes to setting the stage for the day for a student and then getting them ready to go home.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot, so I don't have much to say. Just wanted to reiterate what a great, board meeting this always is every year, and a reminder of why I think all of us on this board do what we do. And so just honoring the teachers and again, their resilience, and their fortitude and, you know, pushing along when I know it was very tough. So really did, appreciate that. And I wanted to give a shout out also to the community for the vote, for getting out and voting for our board elects, Carmen and Hans. Just, really looking forward to working with you. It's one of these, bittersweet moments for me because I'm very excited about, what you two bring to the table and how we'll be able to start, meshing together and working together. And as well as Jana with your, you know, another 4 years for you. So that part is exciting. And then there's the other part of knowing when new people come on, it's because people are rolling off. And so sometimes that's a little bitter for me because I have enjoyed, working with, Louis and Heather. And just know that they pay many hours to our school board. And I've appreciated all that I've learned from both of them. So it is a bittersweet moment for me knowing that I'm saying hello to some people as well as goodbye. But thank you both, for all that you've done. And thank you to you two for stepping up, and answering the call. I really appreciate you. So, and thank you to the community for the vote for the East Boston senior tax exemption. That is huge. I actually did an event with, the board chair, Vicki Turner, over at DeKalb County, last weekend to push out the vote and to talk about the importance of the East Lost. And we did kind of this rally around town in all different stops, and it was actually, quite invigorating, and it was nice to just be around people, but also for the reasons that we were together, to focus on vaccines and also voting. So thank you for all who participated in the process. I did want to mention the school crossing guards. You know, every time I drop my daughter off and I see how engaged they are with the children, because they don't necessarily have to do that. They are out there to keep our kids safe, make sure they get into the building safely, make sure they get back to their cars or homes safely. But they really take such pride, in what they do. And every time I'm driving around, and it's not just one, but, you know, I might be at one end of town or another end of town for whatever reason, and I will sometimes just sit there and watch, them work. I love the way that they interact with students. I love the way they interact with parents. It seems that the kids are excited to see them, and that's such a great way to even start their day, because they're being greeted by somebody who is showing them that they're happy to see them. And I just see that across the board. And so just wanted to take a moment to shout out to them for all of their hard work. And, you know, sometimes it's really cold out there, you know, and you wouldn't know it, by the looks on their face. And even with masks on, I can tell that they're still enjoying being out there. So, just wanted to give them a little shout out as well. And lastly, the City Schools Educator, Night at State Farm Arena is coming up. So that's on December 19th. That'll be the Hawks versus the Cavaliers. Ask me how I know that. Somebody wrote it down because I don't do sports ball. But that is the game that will be on December 19th, 7:30. So that's just a great way to kick off the holiday with the family and friends, and then that'll be representing our district that night. So put that in your calendars if you are the sports ball fan. Awesome. All right, so moving on, we will get to the consent items.
Do you mind if I make one
Oh,
comment about
sure.
the music program?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to acknowledge and thank our music program directors, because the chorus and the band and the orchestra at Renfro, 3 orchestras at Renfro, performed this past month, and I attended these events, and it was, parents were feet applauding, like I could just sense the energy, because this is the first time we've had an in-person chorus concert, and they sang in masks, and it was challenging, I know, for them to do that, but it was still so beautiful, and I just am inspired and grateful for our music program at our schools. I know that the theater also performed and won some competition this past month, and so our extracurriculars in general and the extra effort that teachers spend in the outside of school hours to make these enriching things happen for our students are really very much appreciated.
Thank you for that, Liam. Okay, so moving on to the consent items, we have personnel report, the school nutrition report, and our financial report. We have a motion to approve the consent items. Second. All right, and all in favor? Aye. Chair votes aye. All right, so moving on to our action items. Is it back to you, Dr. Furman?
Yeah, so, we gave an overview of the facilities plan at our work session. And, after reflecting on that and thinking about the timing with new board members coming on, it made sense after Sergio and I talked that we would go ahead and, at this point, have the current board, just extend our current plan, until 2023. That will give us some time to review priorities with the new board, talk about what our growth looks like. We are getting an updated analysis from our cooperative strategies. So putting forth to the board approval of an extension of our current 5-year plan.
So you wanting us to vote on that tonight, or are we just discussing it?
Well, discuss, and then if you're ready to vote.
And then we'll get ready to vote.
Yeah.
Okay. So board members, what are your thoughts on?
I mean, I think this makes sense. We had an executive session with lots of questions about enrollment data and coming off of COVID, and we just got the East Plus data confirmed. We all suspected, but getting it confirmed, I think that this is the right move, to give us some time.
Clarify, we had a work session.
Work session,
Yeah.
The work session last week.
I agree.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
We have a motion to accept the resolution for extending the current 5-year facilities to 2023.
Move to approve the resolution, for the 5-year facilities plan to 2023.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And then pillar number 3, Mr.
All
Kerman?
right, I'm going
Okay.
to call up Dr. Huddleston to share her presentation. She has brought several team members, and they will give an overview of what we are doing in our schools and in our district to build and sustain a positive culture and climate. Thank you, Dr. Huddleston. Welcome.
Dr. Furman, board members. So tonight, we will be discussing the third pillar of the district improvement plan, building and sustaining a positive culture and climate. And by the end of tonight's presentation, we hope to have a shared understanding of what it means to have a positive culture and climate, and we'll delve into some of the key initiatives that are a part of this work, discuss the anticipated outcomes, and we'll provide an update on current progress toward our goals and objectives. So, as you've heard in our previous presentations, the work of the 3 pillars are inextricably linked. And the first overarching long-term outcome is that by 2026, CSD will eliminate all disproportionate discipline outcomes based on race. So our long-term outcomes are contingent upon the work that's outlined in the racial equity pillar and build upon the work that's led by our colleagues in teaching and learning. So all students, in addition to eliminating those disproportionate discipline outcomes, we want to see all students having a positive and trusting relationship with at least one adult. And we want to see students, staff, and parents all sharing that they have positive experiences within the district related to student engagement and related to feelings of belonging. We also want to ensure that all of our community identifies the CSD environment as a place that fosters mental health and well-being. So recently, our district has been selected to participate in a national collaborative for safe and supportive schools. This is a 2-year project that's sponsored by the National Center for School Mental Health, and it provides the district and schools that are a part of this project with the knowledge and tools to implement culturally responsive, trauma-informed practices and to promote equity and well-being. So this project provides a framework that really ties together all of the work of the Equity and Student Services Department. And our district mental health professionals and other staff members will receive training on evidence-based treatment, and they'll learn and collaborate with districts from across the country who are approaching mental health and social-emotional learning through an equity lens. So we are one of the 15 districts that was selected across the country to participate in this project, and will receive the training and support for the next 2 years. So I'll talk about the first 3 initiatives that are part of this pillar, and then I'll bring up Diane Andre, who will cover the last 3. And I'll spend most of my time talking about positive behavior supports and interventions. This is one of the first board meetings where we've had an opportunity to really delve in since the pandemic. So PBIS, Positive Behavior Supports and Interventions, is an evidence-based framework with a proven track record of reducing disciplinary issues, improving climate, and thereby increasing academic success. PBIS is designed to improve school environments by making things in the classroom predictable, making sure that they're consistent, positive, and safe. PBIS fits really well within the framework that's been adopted here in Georgia to support the whole child. So this is a slide that illustrates that framework. And the key features that are aligned with this framework include progress monitoring, data-based decision-making, and multi-level prevention. So we'll dig into a little bit about each of those elements tonight. So for example, each school has a PBIS coach and a team, and they meet regularly to analyze behavior data. And the school uses that information to make changes in the environment in real time. And this information is also used to provide targeted support for students as needed. So next I'll talk a little bit about multi-tiered support. It's important to note that PBIS is designed to support students all across the 3 tiers that you see in this drawing by providing structure and providing acknowledgement and feedback about their behavior. And the primary focus of PBIS is preventing behavioral issues, so looking there at Tier 1. And so most of the work is focused on Tier 1 in terms of prevention. So PBIS is a departure from the traditional approach to discipline, which is more focused on stopping undesired behaviors and often includes punitive consequences. PBIS is focused on creating an environment that reduces the likelihood of behavior problems. It also focuses on teaching replacement behaviors and acknowledging appropriate behavior. So a traditional problem-solving approach moves quickly from identifying the problem to developing a solution. Whereas the PBIS problem-solving approach slows down the process to find out why a behavior is occurring in order to be able to address the root cause of that behavior. Interventions are more successful when they're designed to address the underlying concern and are monitored throughout the implementation process. So here's an example of one element of Tier 1 practice, teaching routines. The process includes making sure students understand what's expected, so really defining those expectations for students, then modeling or demonstrating the behaviors that you expect to see, making sure that students know what those behaviors look like in all of the relevant settings, and providing feedback and reinforcement along the way, as well as being flexible and ready to reteach and adjusting as needed. So behavior feedback, as outlined by PBIS, includes noticing and pointing out positive behavior, using consistent language, employing a 5-to-1 ratio of positive comments to any corrections or negative statements, which is no small task, you know, to make sure that all students have that experience. And this approach really builds those positive relationships and improves behavior for the majority of students when implemented with fidelity. So here are some of our friends at Winona Park and then at Glenwood, and they're standing near their expectations in the school. And here are some examples from Oakhurst and Decatur High School, and these are expectations that were developed with input from multiple members of the community. Students have an opportunity to talk about what it looks like to, you know, to be a positive role model in the school. And here we have a picture on the left of our district PBIS coach and behavior interventionist. You may not have had an opportunity to meet Dr. Koger, but she's done a lot of work with jumping in and really getting our PBIS rebooted throughout the district. And she's there with Claremont, and then we have another picture of Winona Park, and this is a time when they were acknowledging students for some of their positive behaviors in the classroom. So the success of PBIS hinges on using data to inform practice, including the continuous progress monitoring, and that is conducted through walkthroughs, through examining work products, through examining and self-assessment. It's also important on the right, as we look at outcome data, we're looking at attendance, we're looking at behavior referrals, we're looking at achievement, and we also get data from the Georgia Student Health Survey, and that's coming back online this year. So here's some more information about how we check PBIS implementation. So all staff members are asked to complete a self-assessment. So we want to know what staff members really think about PBIS, where they are with PBIS and what they're seeing in their buildings. And this helps us to identify any professional development needs, and it helps us to examine the policies and procedures related to PBIS. The next step is walkthrough. So we have members of the PBIS team from the district level and from the school level who are walking through the schools to say, hey, can we see it? Can we hear it? Can we feel it? Do we feel an energy in this building that is positive and that's promoting student learning and relationship throughout the building? And then the third step is looking at the tiered fidelity inventory. So this is an assessment that really helps us to get a sense of how we're doing with implementation and where we are in the process of implementing PBIS. So in terms of evaluation, we have a few tools, and I've mentioned a couple of them, but I'll just mention that we have the school-wide information system, and so you may hear us talk about SWIFT. And there we're talking about an information system that allows us to record behaviors that are occurring in the classroom, and these are behaviors that are not necessarily those that are reported to the state, but behaviors that we want to track to be able to prevent larger issues and to be able to address what's going on in the environment. So we may notice that we're having a lot of incidents that are happening, around lunchtime or near the cafeteria, and then we're able to take that information and look at what we need to do with the environment to prevent that and to address what's coming up. And so already this year, we've had our staff members go through and complete the self-assessment survey. So we are starting to get some data from them, and we will be looking at the tiered fidelity inventory this year. And as you know, this is a little bit of a reset year, and we keep saying that, but you're going to hear that in pretty much everything we discuss. So we are finding that we needed to go back and do some training on Tier 1, and so we have started that process. That happened right at the end of last year. We've had a training for new staff and new PBIS coaches on the school-wide information system, and so that took place in August. And we're also working very closely with our supporters from the state to make sure that we have access to training modules. And these training modules are really going to help us to be able to target the professional learning to where each school is in the process. And individuals will be able to take the modules that they need to be ready to move forward with PBIS. So it's a little bit of a different approach. Instead of having a 2-day training where we pull everybody out and everybody's getting the same training, by taking the self-assessment, we're able to see exactly those pieces that staff members need to be able to move forward in PBIS, and that's the approach that we're taking with that. So the outcomes that we know to expect based on PBIS would be reduction in problem behavior, increased academic performance, increased attendance, improved perception of safety, and more organizational efficiency. So we're able to move through and accomplish our goals as schools and districts. We expect to see less staff turnover, because one of the things that's very challenging for teachers is if you are constantly working through behavior management. So if we're able to alleviate that, hopefully we will have less staff turnover. So those are some of the main things that you see in the literature with regard to PBIS. And with this approach, we're looking at really fostering that environment. So this saying is when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows and not the flower. And the same is for our students. We want to create an environment where the students can blossom and grow. And we do that by working on the environment and pulling together all of the different aspects of the district improvement plan to make an environment where students can learn and be their best. So in terms of the district improvement plan, our first goal is that all K-12 launch full implementation of PBIS with their matrices, their acknowledgement systems, and use of SWIS. And I say we're off to a great start with this. All of our schools have moved forward with this work. And then the second one, at least 6 out of 9 schools will meet operational status with Tier 1, with the remaining at emerging status. And so these levels are really determined by the number of office discipline referrals, and it's also determined by how students are performing on the TFI that I mentioned earlier, the tiered fidelity inventory. So how well they're implementing all of the various aspects of PBIS. And so those are the things we'll be looking for this year with respect to PBIS. So next, I'll talk for just a few minutes about restorative practices. We've had an opportunity to talk about restorative practices over the last year or so since we started implementing restorative practices throughout the district. So restorative practices really is a systematic approach to PBIS. It is a positive approach that really focuses on enhancing social and emotional skills by building the relationships and working to resolve conflict and repair harm. It's an approach that's really inclusive, again, that focuses on building relationships, uses a problem-solving approach like many of the other aspects of the work that you'll hear about tonight, and really has an accountability component. So that's an issue, that's a component that we don't often talk about, but it's about taking responsibility for your actions. And so it's not as if we put in place restorative practices and there are no consequences, but students are asked to really take responsibility for their actions, but then they are given the tools that they need to bring about healing and to be able to be restored to the school community. And this approach is really, it fits well with our equity work because it's really developed to prevent bias and to make sure that all students have equitable access to the learning environment. So I'll let you see a little bit of a video clip about restorative practices.
Nobody does well without a sense of safety and security in relationships. Nobody. And that is how we're wired. If we don't have that, we're not going to learn.
The importance of human relationships, that is the basis of everything that we do. And the focus of restorative practices, I believe, is based on relationships and how we cultivate those relationships.
We want our students to be able to connect with their teachers. You know, they're going to spend 180 days with their teacher, and that line of communication has to be strong between student and teacher for any kind of learning or teaching to take place.
The research is very clear that children learn well when they feel secure, and they don't learn well. In fact, they really don't learn at all if they're insecure.
You know, until they know each other, like each other, trust each other, and me, it's just really hard to get them to focus the way that they need to.
Teaching and education is a human endeavor, and the power of relationships and trust, I think, is the most important. Anytime we try to do school where we forget that or we move away from that, I think we're at risk. So to me, restorative practices has given us the opportunity and kind of released us in administration and conflicts in classrooms to do what we wanted to do from the beginning and really love kids, get to know them, and help them grow as humans and academically as well. So.
I didn't really have any problems until 4th grade, and I had extremely long hair, so a lot of people would end up calling me a girl and whatnot. And I was taught by my family the way that you can stop that is by stopping those people. Every single time I had gotten a fight, I would get suspended. These suspensions made me feel like the normal thing to do in school is to go there and get in trouble. after years and years of trauma and going through not only bullying, but what was going on at home. I think we were living in motels and whatnot. I sort of gave up with school altogether. I think it took about a year or two before I finally ended up getting back into high school. It went from me being traumatized, me feeling like today I'm gonna have to get in a fight just to even learn something. But now I'm feeling like I can go to school and learn something just to get better my future, just to try to get back on that path of courage. And that's why I'm trying to go to Honest Rock Academy, because I have good courage at the moment. You know, I feel I'm gonna make it.
So in terms of restorative practices, we have a little bit of a reset in terms of getting a baseline and starting from where we are, because it was definitely different having that virtual environment versus having more students coming together. We're able to use some of the data from our assessment of PBIS to see where we are with restorative practices. We are also focused on making sure that we provide training for our administrators and key instructional staff. And so we've had a few new people come on, and we've already had a training this year. And some of our administrators attended putting theory into practice, which is sort of a next step. So we've had them go through many trainings about restorative practices, but taking information like what's in the code of conduct and being able to then put that into practice. That's that next translational piece that we've been working on. We're also really fortunate to have two train the trainers in restorative practices in our district now. So we can provide those trainings on demand for teachers and staff or anybody who needs a little refresher, and also to be able to provide restorative conferences and that support for staff members and students as needed. So in the classroom, you'll see restorative practices in circles, in crew meetings, morning meetings, and those happen on a daily basis in our elementary school and quite often in our middle and high schools as well. And then, as I mentioned, the restorative practices are very closely tied to our code of conduct, and we've been working very hard to make sure that we are using some of those restorative opportunities that are outlined in the code of conduct to educate our students when some misbehavior occurs, to allow them to have an opportunity to make restitution for what's happened, to repair harm, and have alternatives to suspension. And sometimes that looks like seeking support through Decatur student-centered counselors and therapists, and many other opportunities to have a restorative opportunity for our students. So both of the areas that we've touched on so far are very much multi-tiered systems of approaching behavior. And this shows how some of the services and supports that are available through equity and student services fit within the tiers. So we talked a little bit about how PBIS, behavior expectations and acknowledgement system, very much fit in that first tier. 80% of the students we would expect to respond to the things that are presented and outlined in Tier 1. And then in Tier 2, we're looking at specialized interventions for learners that are having some challenges. And there, on the behavior side, you'd be looking at small group counseling. You'd be looking at restorative circles and conflict resolution, and interventions like check-in and check-out. And then at Tier 3, for those who really need a specialized and intensive form of support, we would be looking at individual therapy or counseling that may be provided through the student center or partnering with outside agencies, looking at a functional behavior assessment to really find out what the root cause, the functions of behavior that's occurring in the classroom, and then using that information to develop a behavior intervention plan. We also want to look at wraparound services and supports. When we get to that top tier, often it's necessary to really connect with the family, help the family connect with outside agencies, because often there are things that are going on that are outside of the scope of just what's happening in the school. And tier 3 would also be some of our crisis response work, which you'll hear a lot more about in just a few minutes. So in terms of MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, in our plan, we are looking at making sure that we find out what the needs are this year, resource mapping, which is seeing what we have already in place and making sure that everybody in our school community knows what those resources are and how to access them. And so we've had focus groups to see what the needs are. We are having interdepartmental meetings where we come together across different areas to talk about how we can support students. So federal, state, federal programs, teaching and learning, equity and student services, meeting regularly to make sure that we are forming our own problem-solving teams to address the needs of our students. And then we have been working to flesh out and develop a comprehensive behavior support plan and doing that across the different departments as well. So those are some of the things that we have been doing that are multi-tiered approaches to behavior. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Diane Andre, our Student Success Director.
Well, thank you and good evening. I will do my best to keep it short because I could talk about these topics forever. These are some of my favorite things. And so, you know, with social emotional learning, we are actually using C-learning, which I'll talk a little bit more in a moment. But one of the really important things that we are to teach our students how to self-regulate. The program actively teaches students how to do this, and so we do some brief activities with them. So I thought I would walk you guys through one of our brief resourcing activities. And I thought a nice picture of the ocean, at least that's one of my happy places, would help us with that. So these are scripted so that anybody can do them, and I do need my readers. Okay. So I'd like to invite you to participate in a practice called resourcing. This practice calms one's nervous system and increases well-being. Please come to a comfortable position in your seat. This may include having your feet flat on the floor. If you like, relax your hands and relax. You can either close your eyes or soften your gaze to a 45-degree angle, whichever is most comfortable for you. Feel the weight and support of your body in your chair. I invite you to think of an internal, external, or imagined resource that you will engage in when you are no longer in this space. This resource should make you feel better, safer, or greater in your well-being. It could be an activity, a place, or a person. As you think of this resource, bring it to your mind vividly. Bring to mind any sensations, sounds, or smells that accompany this resource. As you stay focused on this resource, notice what you feel on the inside. If you notice a pleasant or neutral sensation in your body, pay attention to that part of your body or sensation. If you notice an unpleasant sensation, bring your attention back to the resource and the pleasant sensations associated with it. If your mind wanders or you're distracted by sounds, that's okay. You're only just bring your focus back to your resource. I invite you to come back to the room and notice how you feel. So you can see that if we embed these types of activities into our day, that it's going to help our students to have those brain breaks that they need and to have a moment to recenter. And, you know, if I had had, I really wish I had had this back in all my years of math. Math and I weren't friends. And so sometimes I would leave math feeling so anxious
Mhm.
that if I had the ability to do this, because we chose to either close or soften our gaze, but you could actually do this. And, for me, there are times that I will get into my car and the beach is my happy place. And if I really sit and focus, and this could be, that was less than a minute, or about a minute. This could be as short as 30 seconds, but I can bring to mind the sounds of the ocean or the water hitting the rocks, my feet crunching the sand, feeling the sand between my toes, the smell of salt water when I first kissed my nose, and that will just bring me back and bring me down and help me to go on with my day. So these are some of the types of practices that we're engaging in order to help our students to be ready to learn. So I want to take a moment to look at this comic. When we consider social emotional learning, it's really not enough to just be able to label and know what others are thinking and feeling. And in a lot of social emotional programs, that is what they focus on. But social emotional learning really needs to be a systemic process that encompasses process, instructional practices, and an instructional philosophy. See, normally SEL is defined for children as they are taught and acquire knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to manage their own emotions, behaviors, and social interactions, and problems in an effective and sustainable way. Now, this has been traditionally identified through the competencies that we all know of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. But honestly, research has shown that students acquire and utilize these skills not only have better academic performance and outcomes, but also the long-term benefits in terms of pro-social behavior, managing stress and negative emotions, and a better attitude towards themselves and the world around them. So it's really imperative that we teach and educate both the heart and the mind. So we are taking, through SEED learning, which is social, emotional, and ethical learning, we're truly taking this systemic approach that I talked about, and some of the many components of it, which we all would want, is attention training, compassion, and ethical discernment. And with these last three things, these are really the three things that make this program different from others. Bless you. Compassion and ethical discernment, resilience and trauma-informed practice, and helping students to realize where they fit into the systems in which they live. This trauma-informed piece is also really trauma-informed, but the trauma-informed within a strengths-based resiliency lens, which means that it's good for all people, not just people who have had extreme trauma. And honestly, when we started this, none of us could have anticipated this pandemic that we went through. So, and I have said this since the beginning, that no one is coming out of this pandemic unscathed, whether it's just feeling isolated, kind of forgetting how to do school, and then, feeling, uncomfortable. We all have had some level of trauma. And so this particular program, I'm just so thankful that we have chosen this as the way that we're going to do this. It really has been a focus prior to the pandemic. We just have really accelerated our timeline. SEED learning is developmentally based, and the main areas of focus are awareness, compassion, and engagement. And they do that from a personal, a social, and a systems approach. So first, it's their self-awareness, and then their social awareness, and then their awareness of how systems are working. And so, and also their engagement with these different systems. So compassion for self, personal engagement, and then it just builds. And this is how the whole curriculum is designed. It is a K through 12 true curriculum now. And we are really blessed that we have been engaged with this work with Emory University and their Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics. And I really have to, one thing I wanted to say is because of this unique approach of looking at awareness, compassion, and engagement in systems, it ties really beautifully into the equity work that we're doing here in City Schools of Decatur. I do want to give a shout out to Ben Knable, who's our coordinator of 504 and school psychology. We're really blessed because, not only has always been a champion, but he was part of the team that helped to develop SEED learning. and he has also gone through a program as a train the trainer, so he is able to deliver the training here in CSD. He's even working with them to Emory University to collect and analyze data to see how our implementation impacts our students, particularly as it relates to school climate, compassion, and teachers' perception on classroom climate, and from being exposed to the curriculum. So this is our goals in the DIP, was to adopt an SEL curriculum K-12, and really to focus on implementation. We decided to slower would be faster, and so we really wanted to focus on our K-5. We did start some of this work during the pandemic with Wellness Wednesday, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. So everybody has been exposed, but we're really focusing on embedding it into our K-5 because it fits so beautifully with our crew work and our EL and our IB learner profile. So, and then we're going to collect our data, as I mentioned. So we started, again, we had already had this work in planning, but we went ahead and we trained our school counselors, nurses, our school psychologists and social workers, some of our CSD parapros and community volunteers. And we started to deliver this curriculum focusing on chapters 1 and 2 specifically. And we got those done in our Wellness Wednesday lessons. That was the focus. And I have to tell you, it was a highlight of the pandemic for me. I taught a K-1-2 class and I taught a 10th grade class. And that's a really different kind of day. So I met a lot of people's pets and their lovies. I got to know them. And they, in fact, I actually had to make some appointments with one student at one of my schools. She said, where did Miss Andre go? Why isn't she coming to see me every week? And so you can see, even in the short while over Zoom, I was able, or Google Meet, I was able to make a difference with these students and connect. And she was fantastic. So we did meet a few times even afterwards. But that was where we started last year. And then this school year, we have already trained Ben has trained 150 plus teachers in our K-5. He's been working on that since August. He has done that by going into our schools and doing some lessons during their faculty meetings, as well as doing intensive training on our November 1st last week to make sure that they were ready. And again, this focus was on 1 and 2. And what's nice about this is we took time with Emory to align this C-learning with IB and the EL framework. So it's not another thing they're doing, it's just how we're doing this, how we are developing these particular skills that are already required within these frameworks that we work. This is some pictures from our trainings. In the summer, we actually trained some of our administrators and some district office personnel. But with that, we are going to continue to roll this out. In the spring, they are going to be working on embedding those lessons 1 and 2. And the teachers have been working really hard in planning. As they've been done training, they've been working to plan it and integrate it. And just so you know, the 6 through 12, through advisement, again, we taught it last year. We're doing some review lessons just to keep, the students in touch with it, specifically talking with them about the resiliency zone and managing behaviors. And again, building on what we've done previously, and then working towards embedding that into probably heavily our advisement programs in the middle and high school. And now we're going to talk about comprehensive school mental health or wraparound supports. And this is really my very, very favorite. I always have to put Maslow's hierarchy in there because we are really, the work that we are doing in teaching and learning and in assessment and in pacing guides is amazing. And we need to make sure that our students feel safe, secure, and well cared for and can be present to access this information. So good old Maslow always shows up. He was the first triangle of a system that loves triangles. So these are all of the folks that we have in our district and in our department who are engaged in this work related to school mental health. And of course, with adding the Decatur Student Center, this actually puts CSD in a very unique situation because we have other layers of support some other school systems don't. And I will tell you that we are being recognized for this work. In fact, last week, Ben and I presented at the Georgia School Counselor Association about C-learning, and I also presented about the work in the Decatur Student Center. And I'm not sure if Dr. Huddleston saw, but we have actually been accepted by the American School Counselor Association to present Seed Learning there. So we are really getting some recognition for this incredible work that we're doing. Yeah, we're really excited to spread the word and bring more friends on. So there are two main areas where we're working on our comprehensive school mental health and school counseling, which of course you guys were talking about earlier, and always happy for conversations around that. We are this year working with the American School Counselor Association to really shore up making sure that we are providing school counseling for all students. And we're going about it in a very, very different way. We are making sure that it's comprehensive meaning that we are in classrooms doing lessons for all, sort of a tier 1 intervention, that we're doing small groups that are usually skill-based by school counselors, and that we are also, doing individual counseling for students. And we actually have a system in place where we elevate it to the Decatur Student Center if it's needed. But our school counselors are very skilled, they're very well trained. But what is really different about comprehensive counseling is that instead of saying, this is what I see, or I think, or I feel like we need, school counselors are also engaging in the review of data to make decisions and to really find those students that might be missed otherwise. Because sometimes there are students that by all outward measures, they're attending, they're not getting in trouble, but they're disengaging from school. And we can identify that through data and make sure that we're putting things in place to make sure that all students are the counselor keys, that is the evaluation that we are using in CSD. The Georgia DOE does support this. This was based on the American School Counselor, their national framework for comprehensive counseling. So every piece of what our counselors are being required to do, including looking at use of time, what are counselor tasks, what are other things that are pulling them away. We're looking at all of that and we're counting that, and they're also being evaluated in that way. Our school social workers are working on a needs assessment, and we're working very cooperatively. This fits really well into the S3, Safe and Supportive Schools collaborative that we're doing, S3LC. We are really focusing on resource mapping. Like, what do we already have in place? Because we really need to have, we have so much. We are so rich in that way, and we want to make sure that we clearly define it and we put it into those tiers, as Dr. Huddleston was talking about. And then where are areas that we can shore up? So we are actually going to be doing that through needs assessment and the resource mapping. And so, of course, I jumped right over this. So this is what our DIP, I just told you what our DIP outcomes are going to be. It's implementing the comprehensive program district-wide. And I have to say, our counselors were amazing. They jumped in, even starting last spring. And it was a big ask. Becoming a comprehensive school system, becoming a comprehensive school counseling program is, and in this way, it's a big lift. But I told them it's a lot of work upfront for the benefit on the back end, and our students are the ones who are really going to win. And we'll be working smarter, not harder. And we've already started to engage in our needs assessment and our resource mapping. Our ASPA training is actually a 2-year initiative. We started in the spring, but we'll actually this time next year, I hope to be able to report to you that all of our schools are applying to become a recognized ASCA model program, or RAMP. And that's not really the goal of what we're doing. Our goal is to really be delivering comprehensive counseling, but this would be a recognition, which is a very stringent, that will show that we are the best of the best, that our counselors are continually assessing their program, they're checking the delivery, they're defining what they're doing and why, and how they're managing that program. What makes it also different, and the key elements, is it is comprehensive services. It is based on standards that we want all of our students to have. They're called our mindsets and behaviors, and that we wanted to walk out of CSD. It doesn't mean that they do the same standards every year. We make them developmentally appropriate, and we build on what was done before, so scaffolding, just like they do in the teaching world. This requires us to have discussions, as we should be, with our stakeholders through advisory councils, and also we write an annual agreement with our principals to say, hey, this is what we want to get done, this is how it supports the school goals, this is how we're going to accomplish it, and this is how, and we'll show you the results at the end. In fact, at some point, you may be asked as board members to attend an advisory council, because in order for us to apply to be a recognized ASCA model program, we have to have a board member signature. So, and you may even be invited to advisory council. So our needs assessment, we started this work again in alliance with S3LC. Last Monday, we spent a lot of time, there was a big group of us, and so our plan is to, we started with a small group, and then we're going to bring in more stakeholders and say, okay, this is what we see, what else do you see, and we're going to build it out to make sure that we don't miss anything. And we talked a lot about attendance planning and looking at attendance proactively for next year, and we're making some very serious plans about that. Crisis prevention intervention. Okay. Well, these are all of these things that we talked about are crisis prevention. Every single one of the things that we have covered today. An applied suicide intervention skills training, or ASSIST, that is another big focus for us. And also district crisis planning and debriefing teams. So with crisis prevention intervention, I'll talk about ASSIST if you're not familiar with it. We are really lucky that DEF supported us in hosting a national Train the Trainer this past summer. And with that, we had four people in CSD. 3 of them are employees. One is a community member who became trainers of ASSIST so that we can build capacity within our own school system for this. And what's great about ASSIST, Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, is that although it was developed for that, it is actually applicable to lots of other things. It really helps you to work with somebody and help them to identify where they're stuck, and then how we can walk them through that. So it can be anything. It can be, I'm not progressing in the sport that I want to. How are you stuck? What are you doing now? And looking at that and helping them to get over that hurdle. And it could also be an academic. So it's applicable to many things. We are also, what's great about this training is it's for anybody. So we are hosting several, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we're trying to create a suicide-safer community by utilizing this program. So in July, I told you we did the Train the Trainer. We have already conducted one of our trainings, which was October 7th and 8th. We had 17 people trained. That was mostly EMSS personnel that were new and hadn't been through it before. We had several administrators, teachers. This week, actually, Thursday and Friday, we're taking over this building and we're doing it again. And then we have 2 more, and I would invite any and all of you to join us in that training. I will tell you, it is 2 of the most intense days of training you will ever do, but you will walk away ready to use it right then and there. And I've never been to a training where I didn't have to go back and feel like I needed to review. You walk out ready to go. And so we're really blessed to be able to do this. In fact, a lot of the money that was raised by the Soapbox Derby is going to help us to pay for this training and to provide it, because one of the things we think is really important is that we make sure that our community has this information. So we have, I've invited local therapists, we've invited some local doctors. We're now trying to reach out to our fire and police to get them involved, or we want our SROs trained, and again, we have more teachers and administrators. We see a student's behavior has nothing to do with actually what happened. There's some underlying issue, and this will help them to identify it. Now, this doesn't mean we expect people to do the intervention. We also talk about warm handoffs to the mental health professionals in the building, but you will feel equipped to intervene anytime. Crisis response. So we actually started this process in 2018 because I believe the best defense is a good offense, be ready. And so what we did was we started training folks so that no matter what type of crisis we have, it will be the same and a consistent response to any school that we would go out to. What we are adding that most people miss in crisis intervention is that we are adding a debriefing piece of it. And that means that we are going to take care of the people in the aftermath who have been managing the crisis. Having worked in local schools, the administrators, they jump in, they go into, I need to handle this. and they still are feeling the impact of that loss of a teacher or a student or whoever it is. And, you know, we actually need to make sure that we're caring for the caretakers as well. And crisis intervention, of course, has several purposes. You know, it's to try to lessen the impact of the crisis, and it's also to try to bring back to whatever that normal afterward is going to be. We did training back in the spring. It was virtual, and so we feel like we need to do a shore up. So Ben and I are going to, we've been trained previously, and so we are going to, in early 22, make sure that we shore up those skills so our folks are ready to go, and we hope that they don't need us. So. Wondering.
First of all, thank you both for this presentation. I think it gave us very nice in-depth look at what the work that is happening in our schools and on the district level to build a positive culture and climate. I also want to say I really appreciate the resourcing activity. I find I've used them in the past and never knew it was called a resourcing activity, but keep getting my breath and kind of focusing. I always think of my dog snuggling with me.
I was wondering, has the self-assessment survey gone out yet this year? And I was wondering if it would be possible for us to see the results of that. And then who completes the tier fidelity inventory?
So that's a team process with members of the district.
Okay.
PBIS
Yeah.
team will be team. So.
I first want to start with saying thank you. Very much appreciate this as a positive behavior and intervention and support as a part of our code of conduct and restorative practices handbook, and that it's not just a punitive process and system. And I'm in the future, and I'm wondering how we will try to collect evidence in CSD to see how PBIS positively impacts, reduces the number of discipline incidents, and also how it improves academic performance. I'm curious how we plan to track that and try to connect those.
A lot of the information will come from quiz. So when I talked about that system that we're able to collect information even before it would be entered and be a part of what's reported to the state. So we won't have that gap of not knowing, so, what information was collected, what actions were put in place after that. So that will be one touch point for us. And we'll also be able to look at the discipline outcomes and to see when restorative practices were offered, when they were presented as an alternative to suspension, and be able to track that way as well.
I'm excited about that. I know that as a board, we've talked about that and wished for that for a long time. And so great job implementing this during a pandemic. I know that was probably an extra challenge, and also so grateful for our student center. And now that our students are back in person, that they're able to utilize that. And I'm curious what kind of outreach you do to students to make sure that they know that you exist and under what circumstances they're welcome to go there, and just kind of to lower that barrier of entry for students to actually go and.
Right. So we're constantly advertising where we are. We did, of course, we do at the high school, for example, first days of school, where we talk about all expectations and things. So we actually had one whole video segment that Kim Evans, the high school center counselor, who's wonderful, she made that video. And really the center is for everybody, because as you know, we do offer mental health services, and that's a large part of what we do. And we also do offer an opportunity for students to come and self-regulate, and we even teach those kinds of skills. But we also have the lost and found, we have the green closet, and a lot of students do that. Of course, we have menstrual products in there. And we even have, water and snacks, so that makes us super popular. And I will tell you, what's really great is every year, even our school newspaper comes, and the students, they actually just did another interview today, and we're engaging our students in a lot of ways too, because we have students that are in I'm going to get it wrong, and they're going to be upset if they hear, but a fashion and design club. they actually took on designing the closets, because they're all about fashion marketing and upscaling and stuff. So I have 2 student interns who are working in there. We just reached out to the graphics design kids, and they are actually doing flyers for us. We're putting flyers up around the school with a QR code so that they'll know the form that they need to fill out. And we're gonna put them in inconspicuous places and very obvious places. But we want them, one, to have our logo out there and for them to see it, but also to be able to quickly know how they can refer. To be honest, referrals have not been a problem. We have a couple hundred at both schools, RMS and DHS, which have physical centers. But of course, we're serving pre-K through 12. We have JD Dryling, who is our full-time play therapist, who works with all our schools, and we have Fonta High, who's our half-time therapist. Yeah, I would love more therapists. Thanks for asking. And she works at the middle and the high school, and they're filled, and we actually have, our GSU interns try to also make themselves visible, and they've been offering small groups, which everything from mindfulness. We've been offering executive functioning skills at the high school. In fact, that wraps up next week for this semester, and then we'll do another round next semester. That's been really popular. And we also have some advocacy groups that are going on that our interns are involved with. So we're out advertising those, and we email the students, and we put announcements out. And I've been starting to ask students, all right, how do we make sure that you guys have this? So there's always students that say, I didn't even know this existed. And we've had some high profile things like the Soapbox Derby grant and stuff like that. So always open to ideas and always asking the students.
I have a question. And I'm excited about the Student Success Center, and I think that it's one of the most important things that we've got going. And I think that if we want to really meet our goal, we're going to make everybody be their best, give them the support they need, achieve their potential. I think this is key. People need that kind of emotional support and counseling. And I hope that we can increase resources to it. I think we need more counselors. I don't think we have enough. And one question that I've got is how you measure success and how you measure whether your programs are working. One of the great risks and that I perceive actually with the Student Success Center, we've got all these great programs. We've got all this great energy going into it. There's a giant unmet need. And there's a big risk that we pat ourselves on the shoulder and say, we've done so much, but we haven't actually met the need. We haven't actually helped the kids. I know that we're helping some. I also know that there's a whole lot of kids who are still falling through the cracks. And even kids who try to go to the support center and are just not finding what they need. My question is, how are we measuring that to make sure that we've got the right programs being effective? And I guess I'd like to hear your answer. And the second, related, that I don't remember, even as a board member, being asked, how are we doing? Did we meet your needs, right? And I think that when we evaluate these programs, we need to ask not only the kids, but the parents and say, what more could we have done? And right now that's not happening. I think if we did, we might find different ways to target some of these programs, and we might find some gaps. We've been talking about doing these kind of outreach surveys for a long time. There's a very large need for that on this particular program. And I know that we're feeling it out. We're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. I just think that we need to be very deliberate about measuring what we do so that we can improve it. I am interested in your, hard to talk these things on, but what kind of metrics or measures do we have in place now?
And of course, for me, we look at our students, really, I tease my therapist, I'm like, I really would like us to be out of business. And they're like, we don't share that with you, right? But we kind of say it jokingly. But the truth is, like, our goal is that students need us less and less. That we actually teach them skills that they can use, just like these resourcing type things. We teach other kinds of actual skills, and when they can come in and we'll check in with them, they're like, I'm good. And we have students that went from like barely being able to sit in class that will come in, they're like, I need 5, and they'll go and they'll do their thing, and they're like, I got it, and they'll leave. We do want to do some surveys with students to get feedback. This is our first full year of truly having a center. Yes, we've been doing programming since the past several years, but to really have this space. So, we do want to do surveys with students to get some feedback, about the services in particular. And yes, I guess, we need to reach out to parents, and we're trying to get parent input. We'll be doing that, getting, parent input on programming. One of the things too, I want you to know though, is that the Student Center has also been working with the advisement team to do mental health lessons. And I want to remind you that we had planned to do another round of these, but even in our first year of full function, we actually sat with teachers and planned and embedded mental health topics into the curriculum they were already using. So some of them were easy, like AP statistics, use mental health statistics. And then we went back 2 years later and made sure they had the most up-to-date ones. In 2020, we were planning to do another round of those so that every student would have access to at least 2. The funny thing is when we talk to students, they don't even realize it's happening. But we're having these, and part of that is going to the destigmatizing, right? That's one of our big goals, is to destigmatize the idea around mental health. It's just another form of health. And every single person in here and every single person listening, any one of us can have a mental health crisis at any moment. And it could be something as simple as, I got a flat tire on the way to work. That's a mental health crisis. It's just a matter of whether it's a short term and how I bounce back versus a long-term one. And so we're trying to really make sure that we're embedding those topics to make it regular conversation. And to me, that's a win. Might not be one I can quantify, but it's definitely a win. So we're looking at doing some surveys. I do think on the Georgia Student Health Survey, in terms of their feelings of safety, and there's a lot of questions around depression and anxiety and things like that, and also drug and alcohol use. I think all of those things will give us a picture on our mental health.
Dr. Hilton, I really liked, right at the beginning of your presentation, and maybe it speaks to this, that every student will have a positive and trusting relationship with an adult in the building. I think that's really tough to measure, and I'd love to hear us wrap our brains about how we're going to measure that, because as we have this Teacher of the Year presentation, like the PE teacher and talking about being a mentor for a student that she didn't even coach, made me tear up a little bit. And the teacher here who taught my kindergartner how to read over a computer, and she asked if she could come over for her birthday on Saturday. I'm like, no, I can't invite Miss Rose over to your birthday party, I'm sorry. But to develop that relationship. If we could measure that, I think that speaks to it, because we all have, you all are in education, you all have that. Jane and I were, we have that teacher that we have that relationship with, and if you do that, I think that's there because that's a measurement of mental health and a connection in the school, because you have someone you can go to. But are we measuring? Is there a way to measure it? Are we measuring that?
Yeah, definitely ways to measure it. So we are planning to bring back some of the assessments that we sort of put on hold during the pandemic. So bringing back tripod assessments, and their components that look at belonging and, other aspects that will help us to get. But we have so many different touch points with our students right now. The student advisory groups, it's a wonderful opportunity. Not only are those students meeting with the superintendent, but they go back and they talk to their classmates and they bring information. So that's a touch point.
Yeah.
When we first started this work, we did focus groups, and I really like mixed methods. I came here from the university setting, so I'm always about how do we collect data and how do we connect that data to our actions. And so we'll be doing more focus groups. There are a lot of focus groups that are associated with the Decatur Student Center. So those are, maybe the N is really small on that, but I think it helps us to understand what some of the survey data is telling us.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to collect the information. Those are just a couple of the ways that we'll be able to do that.
And then taking that, because the kids in the survey group who step up and participate are often the ones who will find that, and then taking that and comparing it to the roster, has this student reached out and said, you said everyone, maybe I would highlight every student, because that's the hard word.
And I think really looking at all of the different efforts that we've been talking about, when you look at attendance, we have a major focus on attendance. Social work is in our department. We're looking at, I pull the data, every month, schools are turning that in, and I want to know with each name on here, this student has been out this many days, what's going on with this child. So the kids are not just a number, you know, we are checking, on every child to see, you know, why is that student not engaged, what's going on. So there are just many touch points, and we're fortunate to have data, and we have to make sure that we're using that, to inform the work that we're doing going forward.
My second, this is with the train-the-trainer stuff, and I'll call it pre-COVID, Dr. Banks and I had a conversation about, if you look at the Chicago data for PBIS and it's rolled out, one of the toolkits was that parents were involved in a conversation about PBIS and how it works and how to do it at home and that sort of stuff. And I wonder if we've kind of gone back and maybe PTA is paying for Ben's time or whatever. Like, I would love to just sit down and hear what that training was all about. Just to throw that on your plate is something else to think about.
This is definitely on my list. I spoke with my staff a little bit about doing a parent academy for PBIS. And before I came here at Georgia State, we did that for very young children, even preschool children, to look at how to use positive behavior at home. And so I think it's really important for us to get to that. Have to partner with parents in almost every aspect of the work that we do.
Yeah, because I remember going through the PBIS data, that was one of those toolkits, if I remember correctly, for getting the kids that were not buying into school, educating their parents on what was happening and bringing that positivity was a big correlation as well.
Just one follow-up to the suggestion and discussion about getting feedback from students and parents, and I second that. I think that's very important. And I also just want to say that I think it's also equally important to get feedback from the teachers to ensure that we have their buy-in, because I can see that there could be a sense of frustration for teachers if a student is leaving their class to go to the student center, and just want to make sure that that message is clearly communicated to teachers, that this is available and encouraged for students to go, but also some sort of mechanism that teachers are feel comfortable that the students leaving for legitimate reasons, that it's not being abused. Like, well, you know, where are the kind of catches and balances there for that feedback and relationship with the teachers who I believe need to be included in supporting this effort.
Absolutely, and so, you know, Principal Lockstrand has been wonderful in allowing Kim some time in the beginning of the year to actually address their faculty at the high school. I know Sabrina, you know, she has really great relationships with her coworkers at the middle school, and so we actually, it's been great because the teachers are very open and honest, and just so you know, like, we really try to be very intentional about, like, if we make appointments with students, we never, unless it's something that, like, we have some students that there's, well, I can think of one example that she actually does work-based learning, but she doesn't start until 4, so she actually doesn't have her last period class, and so that's when she makes her appointments, so she won't miss anything academically. If they have to miss something, we'll make sure it's first period 1 week, second period the next, third, so, because teachers don't, and not weekly, but we're also trying to spread them out, but, you know, it's one thing for a student to miss 1 class a semester or 2, and it's another thing for them to be gone all the time. And so we'll even look when Ms. Jones, our AA, when she's checking people into the center, because we have a kiosk just like the attendance office, she actually looks to see, and she'll give us a heads up, hey, this is the 3rd time in 3 weeks the kids come during 3rd period, and we'll have a talk with this student to say, you know, is there something going on in 3rd period? Is there someone you're struggling with? And sometimes it's a conflict with a student in there, and then we'll talk about having a restorative conference with that person, or maybe we all need to sit and talk, or maybe we need to have can we help you to facilitate a conversation with the teacher so that you're not in the same small group, and you're, you know, those kinds of things. So we try to be extremely intentional about that, and we're also, you know, we've actually, we take our teachers' feedback, and so quite frankly, we've changed the PASS system because it was, not being utilized in the manner in which it was intended, so put it nicely and politically correct. And so we actually have passes with teachers' names, and we require that they have passes. We've supplied them with passes for, like, we need these in your subfolders. We're not going to take sticky notes because it's too easy to do that, but that's also caused some problems. So we're like, okay, so we're brainstorming actually tomorrow, like, okay, how can we make it so easy for them? Because we printed their name on it and those kinds of things. So, and just so you know, we also recognize we need to take care of our teachers. And so we've partnered with DEF, and we're doing a pilot program at the high school, where we're offering up a health coach, where teachers can make, and administrators, and can make appointments with this coach and get some feedback, because we know we have to take care of them as well.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Well, that was actually my question, Heather, so thanks. Now it looks like I don't have anything to say. But no, that was a great presentation. Thank you for it just being so thorough and thoughtful and intentional. Learned a lot, and just looking forward to, like you said, now that we're having to kind of start it over, definitely looking forward to some of your data coming in over the next few months and next year to see how PBIS is working and how the Student Success Center is working, and what we could do better, and how us as a board can actually contribute to making that better as well. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
We have the enrollment report.
Actually, there's
Other-
one more thing. So on the agenda before the enrollment report was informational, but I did do a second round of interpretation on the ends policy for academics and foundation. So if you look at page 120 of your packet, there is the superintendent's interpretation, and we were 1, 2, 3, and 4 of those tick marks in that box. Those you didn't have any input on, but 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I created some alternatives and some more input on there, so looking for your feedback on the changes to those last 5.
Sorry, the last 5
the
on
last-
this page.
On page 120, in the second box, superintendent's interpretation, and if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, those ones we were good on. So then it's 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, the dashes.
Okay.
And what I did is I teased out, so I did attain their highest blank blank potential to kind of define what that phrase means, and then teased out and specifically looked at academic potential, intellectual potential, personal potential, and then the last piece about being prepared to thrive in life beyond high school.
That's good.
I have a reaction. I don't know if I have a suggestion.
Okay.
And some of this comes from some of the discussion when we first establishing verbiage for the goal. But the phrase that the students, every student has attained their highest potential. When we were developing that caused some friction. People said, well, how do you know what their highest potential was? It sounds like you're pegging the kid and saying, well, this is what you get, because that's your potential.
Yep.
And the intention is otherwise, of course, saying that everybody's going to get as many resources as they can continue.
Yep.
As long as they can continue to grow, they will. Somehow or another, the interpretation is they've reached their top level of achievement possible for the student's ability level. That discordant note to me. That sounds like we've decided what that top level of potential is. I completely understand the intention, and I'm sure that we share the same understanding of the goal. Particular phrasing of it, to me, sounds a sour note.
Okay.
Which part of it are you?
Have reached the top level of achievement
Top
possible
level?
for the student's ability.
Do you have a recommendation
I
for
don't have a recommendation.
different verbiage? Okay. Any other board members have a suggestion?
I mean, that you saw the ability.
Does it have to do with resources? Like, have the resources they need to reach, their, the level of, they might need to maximize their level of achievement? Is that?
I thought it was more about the student, not really what, that they will max out at their highest ability. But I don't know that it's, that they will have been given every opportunity to achieve, to have a sense of efficacy, or, I don't know if efficacy is maybe not.
And I think maybe to read that in concert with the academic potential interpretation, intellectual potential, because that does, to me, frame it in, we're not gonna max you out, we're gonna continue to push you forward.
I agree. I like the way that the intellectual potential is phrased, and I thought it avoided that problem.
Okay.
The other thing, just for what it's worth, is that when we were doing this exercise originally, I was on the opposite side of this debate. And I was saying, well, come on, you know what we're trying to say. You know, there's someone else, I don't remember who.
Yeah.
Who voiced it.
Uh-huh.
Just, I thought I'd mention it. I'm not hung up on getting the words right.
Okay. And that's the thing is, too, is if this is close enough, you know, we can move forward on progress monitoring.
Which I think is the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have comments or suggestions? Okay,
So great, thank you for working on them and tweaking them, I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Tricky one.
it was a
Yeah,
tricky
it was
one.
tricky one.
I wanted to get this one because it's so big, and I think it's so important to have a really good understanding and common language when we talk about, particularly the academic end. So, that one was really important for me. So, okay, so I will, add that to our calendar, and we can start monitoring that report. And then you have, the last two pieces are informational for, the monthly data reports and then the enrollment reports. Any questions on those? And Jana, you had a question on the last page of the, enrollment report, which is page 140 of the packet, page 14 of the report, about the two different projection models. And I did touch base with, Heidi, and she confirmed that, yes, the way Cooperative Strategies was modeling our projections, they created their version of what they felt, hey, these are the appropriate projections. And then when it was interpreted by the administration, there was the desire to look at holding our kindergarten and first grade projections steady. They were the recommended, projections from Cooperative Strategies was decreasing our enrollment in K-2 over several years because of lower birth rates. And there was a feeling that those would probably stay stable. So that's why there were two different ones. We touched base with Cooperative Strategies, and they are saying their recommended one is the one that they would put forward as the most appropriate modeling for enrollment projections.
For a decrease in K through 2.
Because there's decrease in live birth, not just within our nation.
Is there a decrease in our community?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
I think that the debate came up because so many people were moving in.
Right.
That,
Right.
like, and moving from out of state
Yep.
even. So, like, having traced it to our community and the birth rate here didn't necessarily seem to coordinate, so there was some discussion between those two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on the enrollment report? So, and Lenita and I are going to our final budget planning session next week, and we will be plugging in all of our FTE data, the budget revenues for the upcoming school year. So that will be part of the presentation that we share at the end of the month. Okay, any questions on the monthly report?
No, just thank you for them.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank the principals for them.
Thank the principals, yes.
And then I think that was it. Just any upcoming dates?
Future dates? Anything we needed to point out? specifically. We have the GSBA, that's, in December, first week in
Is
December.
everyone registered and going? I'm assuming you two probably are taking this one off.
I'm registered.
You
Am I-
did?
am I
Good.
registered?
I didn't.
Okay.
Shayna has to hold me,
Okay.
me too.
To the fire.
Me too.
Well, if
But
I'm
it-
not registered yet, I'm yet.
And it is virtual or in person. I'm gonna attend in person, just because I learn better that way, but it is virtual if that's more, better for you to
Do you know
attend
if you can
virtual.
do both of those options depending on the day?
I'm not sure, but we can
Because I know one of them is a board chair one that I would like to attend in
Oh,
person,
yeah.
but, I don't know if I'll be able to do the other ones in person.
Okay. Okay.
All right, awesome. So we, are going to, adjourn our public, session and go into executive session. So there will be, no action taken after executive session, but we will be going back into executive session for personnel. Oh, sorry. So do we have a motion to go into exec session?
Move to go into executive session.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, going into exec session. Thank you so much. Meeting is adjourned.